First of all, whenever you're starting a business, do not spend dime one until you have validated the concept. So, do we know that a school is needed? How do we know a school is needed? Who is willing to fund the school? Who needs the school? So, asking those questions is really, really important.
Dr. Diane Dye, welcome to our Inspiroqa podcast. How are you today?
Pleasure to be here. I'm doing great.
Where are you joining us from today?
So, I'm from Austin, Texas.
Texas. Nice. How is the weather there right now? It's almost Christmas time within a couple of days.
Yeah, we're about to have one of our warmest Christmases on record. I think it's going to hit probably 80 degrees Fahrenheit here over
Mhm.
Christmas.
Wow. So it's gonna be, I don't know how many Celsius is this, but if it's gonna be hot, that is nice. I'm joining from Bali, so we're not gonna have snow this year, unfortunately, but we're gonna have sunny day today. I hope it's not gonna be raining as I'm watching through the window right now. So let's start this discussion about you personally, about what do you do, and when people see you for the first time, can you please tell us about your background and what do you do?
So, hi everybody. My name is Dr. Diane Dye. I am the experimentation strategist that founders and CEOs bring into the room when they are changing in their organization. So, that might be they are scaling and getting bigger, they are facing some sort of setback within the organization, they have a breakdown, they need to turn into a breakthrough to drive innovation. So, that is me. And in terms of my background, I have a doctorate in organizational change and leadership from the University
Wow.
of Southern California and also a master's in communication management from USC as well. So I'm a two-time USC Trojan who is committed to helping organizations really understand their organizational makeup and how that organizational makeup either performs well during change or
Mhm.
has the tendency to create some risk.
Wow, so you have bunch of experiences. You are a doctor. Wow, so many studies. You basically like you still have to study some new stuff, if I'm right. There is so much to learn these days. So, if you can tell us about, you mentioned you work with the organizations. Can you please tell us like what kind of organizations are these companies that hire for consultations for help leaders to become a better versions of themselves?
I work with a lot of nonprofits. I work within
Mm-hmm.
the healthcare industry. I work within manufacturing, construction. Ultimately, they are organizations where mistakes within the organization impact the service line very quickly. So they're service-based organizations where if there is a internal breakdown in the organization, there's a problem with change, your customer finds out about it in 5 minutes, not 5 years.
Yes. And what pulled you into this work? It just like this happened like, oh, I'm gonna be a coach, I'm gonna mentor organizations how to be like have a better results. I'm gonna help leaders become better versions of themselves. I think there has to be some background or there has to be like a calling like from a God or from universe, right? Something like this. Or maybe personal stories or something like this.
Well, I am the daughter of an entrepreneur, and
Ah.
I am a multi generational entrepreneur. So, my father was an entrepreneur, my grandfather before that, even all the way back to my great grandmother, they were entrepreneurs during the Depression. And I have been inspired throughout my line. But to clarify, I am a management consultant. And I think it's important to delineate what a management consultant is versus a coach. A
Mm-hmm.
coach is a great individual who asks a lot of questions and they ask a lot of probing questions. But the general belief around coaching is that you have all the answers that you need within
Yeah.
you. There's not a lot of framework provided, not a lot of research, not a lot of structural pieces. They certainly don't come in and advise on your organization, whereas a management consultant, they utilize established frameworks in order to advise corporations and companies
Mm-hmm.
to help move them forward according to look to best practice within their organization, their different industries. They also will coach, they will ask questions. However, when an executive gets stuck, they provide specific tools related to advisement, to trusted advisory, to get unstuck. So that's the key differentiator between a coach and a management consultant. But what I've found throughout the years, and this is with my family as well as the families that I have worked with, is that there comes a time where I could be asked a million and one questions and still not know the answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it takes that been there, done that, bought the t-shirt kind of person to help walk alongside me. So my firm was actually built when I got laid off 4 months into my master's program. And I had consulted freelance for many years before that, since 2009. But when I had got accepted to USC's, my absolute dream school, and I was overjoyed. And 4 months later, I was on the floor because I was laid off from this early stage tech company that I was working with. I had ownership, possible, stock options in this company. Like I thought I was set. So here I am. I'm set. I have this role, and now I've been accepted to my dream university. And one day the CFO calls me into his office and said, "You know what? You've done a great job automating the sales, the pre-sales function of
Mm-hmm.
this, the customer success, the pre-sales function. We are ready to scale up. We're ready to hire more salespeople. Unfortunately, we don't have the budget for you." So
Ah.
I was laid off 4 months into my master's program, and I was just upside down. So I went to my professor at the time, and she asked, "Well, have you talked to your group?" And the great thing about USC and a lot of universities is that they cultivate their admissions. They're looking for a specific type of person. They cultivate their admissions. So I sat down in front of my team, and I said, "I got laid off. Unemployment told me, and this is a US thing, in order to gain unemployment, you have to be willing to accept any and all full-time work. That means you can't be in a master's program and unavailable for full-time work." So didn't matter that I had a full-time job and I was doing my master's at the same time. They were going to deny me unemployment. So I was very upside down about this. And they said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Well, what I really like to do is start my management consulting firm. I've been freelancing since 2009. I feel like it's time." And they said, "Well, then do it. Student loans are for housing and for food. You're set up. You have your education paid for, your housing, your food." So the very next day, I marched myself down to the Secretary of State's office, and I started what at the time was called What Works Consultants, which is a
Yeah.
management consulting firm, which then over the years, now I'm entering year 10 of business, evolved into people risk consulting, because the biggest risk in change is the people involved, and the people often get forgotten.
Wow, so it's been already 10 years, if I'm not wrong, or even more.
Yes.
That's the best. I'm so proud of you that even though you felt like upside down, you were in your life, you were like, I'm not gonna keep myself on my four on the ground. I'm gonna like find a solution. I'm gonna just move on in my life. Do you think it was much easier for you to start because of, like you mentioned, you have a business background, your family, like 3 generations back then have this business background already? Because for me, I'm coming from a normal family. My papa, he had to start business because, like, he was working for a company as an electrician, and then they just starting firing the people, and he had no choice. And suddenly it's been, wait, I think since 2000 he's been doing his business, 25 years if I'm not wrong, and step by step he grew up his business and he's much better. But I got inspired by him and I also have my own business, so I was like, yes, I want my generation, my other generations after me also to become like business owners.
Yeah, and I think it's funny how you say that you came from a normal family. I didn't say that my family was entirely successful at their business
Ah.
ventures.
Mm-hmm.
So, my great grandmother actually died during the Depression because their grocery store, my great great grandfather and my great great grandmother's grocery store, burned down.
I.
And it burned down during the Depression. And in order to feed her children, my great great grandmother, she starved.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother ended up becoming an orphan at that point in time. My grandfather, he did have a real estate brokerage that operated, fairly successfully, but then his wife got Alzheimer's
Mm.
and he had to focus and take care of her. And they say that Papa died of a broken heart.
Mm-hmm.
My father, he he actually ran a paving company. And then he sold that paving company and he turned that into a hotel that I actually grew up in. And that hotel was really prosperous. It actually brought power, electricity, all the things to this corner of this town, Lytle, Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and transformed that corner. But I will tell you today, that motel is leveled. There is a gas station on top of it because my father was not surrounded by the right people, the right cohort to advise him in business. He turned down a major chain deal when I
Mm-hmm.
was very young in age, resulting in a spiral down. And about 10 years later, he sold it to someone else who then, of course, could failed business during COVID. So the fact is that these stories inspired me because setbacks do not have to mean blow up. And yet, without the frameworks, without the people to walk alongside, without that cohort, that is the story for a lot of entrepreneurs. So, I created my critical opportunity method during that master's program at the University of Southern California
Mm-hmm.
to understand what created business failure and what created the opportunity to innovate from that failure. And identifying that, I found a process in which you can follow very succinctly to turn any type of breakdown into a conscious breakthrough, and how to understand when you are in that downward spiral, how to come into awareness, consciousness, and humility about that change, about what's going on, so that you can get to know it a little
Mm-hmm.
bit and then pull opportunity from it versus perhaps destroying what you work so hard to build.
And this critical method, it's only for like people who have already businesses, who are leaders, or it can be used, for example, for myself if I'm just like going in the circles and I'm looking for like, okay, I have to find a solution, but I don't know why. Because I was checking information on your website, which is really nicely informed so people can check it and know what is your job about. So my question would be like if you can tell us more about this critical method, and then I will ask you more about how did you overcome these ups and downs, because this creates a curiosity, like especially about Inspiroqa. Like we want to help people who feel stuck in their life. That's why I also invited you for this podcast to give them the answers, because I knew you fell down. You've been rejected at your university studies, and suddenly like life gave you so many obstacles, and you said like, no, get out, I'm gonna find a solution, I'm gonna find my path, I'm gonna build a business that is gonna be helping people to become better version of themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And it can be used by anybody. I think it's incredibly helpful whether you're looking at yourself or you're looking at your organization or your team.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does specifically is it takes a real close look at what happens when it gets hard. And what happens when it gets hard sometimes is we go the other direction. We go into denial. It's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
Disavowal. It might be happening, but this is not right. 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 So I'm just going to disavow anything associated with it or ego. I'm either too good to be going through this
Oh
or
yeah.
not good enough. And therefore, I deserve what I get. And that is the beginning of a downward spiral that results in victimization and blame and all the way down the spiral to giving up.
Mm-hmm.
And you can map, and I did map through research these companies that followed this pattern. But the beautiful thing is that when you notice yourself in this pattern, not all is lost. You can come into what I call awareness, consciousness, and humility. So, awareness is I recognize that this is happening, and this is specifically what is happening. Consciousness is now that I know what is happening, here are all the elements that are associated with it. So, here are the people involved, the places involved, the things. If we're talking about a company, it's the people, the systems, the processes, the policies, the stakeholders, all of that mapping of the actual conscious situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's humility. So, again, the flip side of ego, humility is realizing that I am neither
Yeah.
not too good to, nor I'm definitely am good enough. I am worthy of my
Mm-hmm.
own right. And now with that, I can come into the place to start to learn more about what I'm going through by putting on a different hat. So
Yeah.
this is really important because in order to observe what you're going through, you kind of have to separate yourself from a little bit. And on the downward spiral, this looks like the next layer, which is dissociation. And I'm gonna drink. I'm gonna do drugs. I'm gonna go party. I'm gonna distract myself. My dad had a group of buddies, and this group
Mm-hmm.
of buddies, they were all business owners in town, but they were all very tied to their personal names on their business. They were all part of the infamous, club of guys who just hung out. And my dad owned the only bar in town. So guess where they were? They were at the club and the restaurant, right? They were in active dissociation for whatever the rest of them were going through. But for my dad, he was really wanting to build a legacy, as in
Mm-hmm.
most people do. Most people want to, whether this is business or this is personal, you want to build your own personal legacy, your own personal dream, as as it said in the Four Agreements. If you know that book,
Yeah.
your own personal dream. And in the legacy sense, we're all in this mode where we are protecting, and we're either protecting or we're controlling, and that's where the mask comes in. And the mask can look a number of different ways. I wear a mighty good lone wolf mask where I will see something going on and I'll be like, I can handle it myself, and I retreat. And
Yeah.
this lone wolf mask is the reason why 72% of business owners are working in isolation. They're
Mm-hmm.
working in isolation because it's like, I've got to solve this, but it's not safe. It's not safe to process this out with my rank and file. It's definitely not safe to talk to my board. And in a personal context, it might not be safe to talk to your family about it yet. It might not be
Mm-hmm.
safe to talk to your employer about it yet. So there's a safety component here. So when you put on that hat, you can then be whatever you want to look at the problem. So you can be a researcher, you can be a curious kid, you can be an adventurer, you can be anything that you want to get yourself into a little bit of a different persona so you can start asking some important questions. And the important questions start with acknowledging what's real. So there is some, in the breakdown, there is some real stuff going on. And
Yeah.
you kind of have to sit down and go, well, maybe this is true. Maybe this is true because A, B, C, D, E, F, that's why this is true. And you have to allow yourself that. You have to
Hmm.
allow yourself that. Then, when you've gotten all that out, you can say, all right, hat time. Maybe this isn't true because, and then you start looking for evidence in that direction. This is a thing that we call researcher bias. And if
Hmm.
you do not address an experimentation strategy, your researcher bias will own you. And it'll own the entire question that you are asking and the outcome that you find. So you have to say, I am totally biased. So maybe this isn't true because da 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 da. And from the not true, then you go, well, maybe if this isn't true, maybe it's possible
Uh-huh.
that, and you start thinking of some possibilities, right? And from those possibilities, then you go, okay, which ones of these are popping out to me? Like, that's kind of cool. And you circle a few of them, and then you make yourself choose one. And that is your research question.
Hmm.
That becomes the container for your experiment about the critical situation. But rewind to the front part because sometimes as you're going through this questioning process, you're like, well, maybe that isn't the core problem at all. So, thinking about my situation, laid off 4 months into my master's program, my core situation wasn't do I start my business? My core situation was how am I going to support myself?
Oh yeah.
So I picked up the phone and I called unemployment, and they said, "No, we're going to deny you if you don't quit your university program." So, ugh, this is really bad. I'm going to have to quit, right? So if I were to go down into these spirals, right, the denial, disavowal, and ego, I could have said, well, forget you. I'm just going to go look for a job and forget unemployment. I'm going to look for a job and stay in my program.
Hmm.
And it may or may not have met that core situation. So, what you want to do at the front end of all this is you want to write down all the stuff that's going on and you rank order it. You rank order it and go, huh, all right, my main concern is how I'm going to eat. So, if that's my main concern, what do I need to ask questions around? And my question was, what are student loans for? And when I found out they're for housing, they're for
Hmm.
food, they're for your education, I thought, wow. So you mean if I get one client, I could pay my bills, but the student loans would cover my housing, my food, and my education? Now I feel better walking
Hmm.
down to the Secretary of State's office, starting my business, and going to get that other client because I know that my core issue has been resolved. So sometimes we can't innovate until there's an old pyramid still stands true, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that safety, security, housing, that does still deeply impact the decisions that we make for ourselves and for our businesses and everything. And I imagine, I was very young when this happened, when my dad said no to the Best Western franchise and said he wasn't going to, he's going to let anyone tell him what to do.
Hmm.
And I was very young, but I can imagine it went sort of like this. If I become a Best Western, they're probably not going to let us live at the hotel. and we have a house, but we have a house 2 towns away. And
Mm.
that's gonna be really hard because I'm always here. And it's gonna take me away from my family. And so you see how it starts to spin, right? And if we don't figure out what the experiment is, that could have been as simple as my dad calling Best Western and saying, "Hey, my family and I live in the hotel. If we became a Best Western, could we still live there? And how lenient are you about changes and budgets around
Mhm.
changes? And how long do we have?" Right? He didn't have those frameworks. What he had was a group of buddies: the
Yeah.
guy who owned the Western store, the guy who owned the bank, the guy who owned the business supply store. All three of those are out of business. And so is my dad. So who you surround yourself with during these times really matters.
That's very nice. So I like the way you explain your past, I don't know how many years, the way you started your business. I see you shining when you were explaining like what is your consultant management about. I was like, wow, she really knows what she's doing. So my question is like you mentioned you took student loan, right, at your beginning because you were searching for a solution. That's actually a really great point. Like if people feel stuck in their life, either they have a choice. Either they're gonna just continue in the spiral, like go down, down, down. They're gonna take the drugs or they're gonna get drunk. They're gonna find new buddies. They're gonna who's gonna put them down,
Mm-hmm.
or you're gonna pick up the phone like this, search on Google and start calling like, guys, I have this job opportunity, I have this idea, please help me. Like that's why I'm also
Exactly.
here in Bali, or for example in America. Like that's where it all started. To be honest, like management consulting or coaching, or there are business startups. You can these days easily find somebody who can just help you if you're looking for investor or if you're looking for a first client like you did. And you weren't even basically were you scared at this beginning, like because when people see, oh, I want to start but I'm gonna have a loan for like 20 or 30 years, damn. And when I see like I want to take from bank like let's say $100,000, after 30 years it's gonna be like $300,000, like damn, it's like too much. Weren't you scared at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes we have to do it scared.
Hmm.
Sometimes we have to take a bet on our future selves and take a deep breath and do the thing. I have another story. So as a result of all this, my dad and my mom did end up getting divorced, and as a result, my dad was still trying to run the business. My
Hmm.
mom was a single mom. We're living separately. He's not able to pay child support at the time, so we were very, very poor, incredibly poor. And I heard the word no a
Hmm.
whole lot, like so much. I heard the word no. One time I was 8 years old and I really wanted to go roller skating. And I was, again, the type of girl who just picked up the phone and figured it out. And that definitely did not make my mom happy. But I wanted to go roller skating with the church. And
Uh-huh.
the same thing, she said, "No, we can't afford it." I heard that a lot. I picked up the church directory and I started dialing. And within a short amount of time, I had a ride to go roller skating. I was paid to go skating. My entrance was paid to get in. I was fed and I was brought back home. And my mom was furious, absolutely furious. And she said, "You always get what you want, don't you? You always go after what you want, don't you?" And what it brought about in me really is what I tell my business leaders all the time. It's not the number of times you get to yes that gets you to success.
Hmm.
It's the number of times you creatively get past the no. So we're getting told no all the time by people, by opportunities, by our wallets, by everything. But when we have that courage to put on that hat, to do the experimentation, a beautiful thing happens in that we can begin to extract the opportunity from those setbacks, just
Mm-hmm.
like I did when I was 8 years old and I ended up going roller skating. But we all have these equivalents of roller skating in our lives and our businesses. We all have this. And if we can recognize that and tap into that part of us that was a little bit more fearless. When I was 8 years old, I don't imagine when you were 8 years old, you're way more fearless. Why? Because the world hadn't taught us how to be scared.
Exactly.
And we fell off our bikes and we broke our bones and we did all the things, right? But it wasn't a huge penalty. And this is where psychological safety comes in. Psychological safety is an environment that not only you build with others, but you can build in one-to-one relationships and you can build with yourself. And when you build that, it's a non-judgmental space. It's a space where questions are asked. It's a space where it's okay to make mistakes and even fail. And when you have that open, trusting environment with yourself, with one other, or maybe a small group of others, great things can happen because you can question into the void. And I call it the hallway. And the hallway
Mm-hmm.
is where you're sitting there in life, in business, wherever, and there's a whole bunch of little lights underneath the door, and it feels terrifying to move. And when you can hold yourself in that place of going, okay, it's okay not to know. And this is a core tenet of experimentation. You start out with a research question, not a research answer. So when you have a research question and not a research answer, the path can wind. You can discover as you ask and find out. You can continue to walk the path, not knowing what's going to be over the next ridge, and you're
Mm-hmm.
okay with that. Why are you okay with that? Because it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to make a mistake
Yeah.
because either you're going to win or you're going to learn from it. And when you view life like that, you view business like that, it becomes so much more expansive. Another mask that people can wear, and it's a self protection mask, is the perfectionist. And the perfectionist is afraid to walk. It's like they're stuck on that trail and they see things to the north, things to the south, things to the east, things to the west, and they have a compass in their hand and they turn and the compass changes directions, but they don't move. So they have the tools, they have the right shoes on, they got the right stuff in their pack, but they're still not walking. When you believe in iteration, in the ability for things to evolve, your experimentation becomes true experimentation. And this is how my dissertation went. I
Mm-hmm.
talked to women who were impacted at home by domestic violence, and when they struggled at work, how their leaders were psychologically safe with them. And I just wanted to
Uh-huh.
talk to women who had been in that environment who had great leaders. But what I discovered was that the psychologically safe environment provided a container to which the women could compartmentalize home from work and begin to improve in their jobs. And not just improve in their jobs, their long term outcome for their careers improved. And they became leaders who did this themselves. And it was a beautiful outcome. But did I know I was going to find that at the start of my dissertation? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, I thought I was going to find the exact opposite. I thought I was going to find that no, no one like this exists. It doesn't exist, and that's why it's so bad. But if I
You
would have
may.
installed my bias, I never would have found my outcome.
Yes, correct. Thank you so much for this another story and this explanation. You mentioned like because what I see these days, like everybody tells you, focus on just like yes, don't say no or don't fall backward or don't fall on your knees. Is there any mistake that you have done in your life and it helped you with your growth? Like, for example, you wanted to do something. For example, you wanted to start a car business. You invested your time, your money into that, but it didn't work. Or you tried another one and tried, and suddenly it was like, oh, I'm gonna do management consultant. Or during the management consultant business, was there any mistake that helped you with your growth?
Oh, all the time and constantly and every day. Literally every single day with every single team member that doesn't work out, with
Mhm.
every single client. I've had relationships that I thought were ride or die trusting. And then I get on the phone and I think that this is it. This is like the referral partner that pulls it all together. And the conversation goes completely sideways and I lose a relationship over it. And all of these things, I really do believe that these setbacks are protection. And I want to not leave something that you said on the floor. You said, people say, don't give up, don't fall on your
Oh yeah.
knees, all of that. What if falling on your knees is exactly what you need?
Hmm.
What if experiencing that is really the pain that is going to spark the next level of purpose? Sometimes you have to close the business to get to the next level.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have to leave the relationship to get to the next level. There was a beautiful relationship that I had that we were friends for almost 20 years. Really tight, trusting, amazing, supportive relationship. And when I tried to turn that relationship into something deeper, I found out some things that I could not withstand. And it changed the entire trajectory of my life. But without taking that leap and moving across halfway across the US to take a chance on it and failing, I would absolutely not know the people I know today, be in the relationship that I am in today, none of it. So sometimes you do. So I don't want to put any make wrong on falling on your knees. Sometimes it has to collapse to come together. It must. I I was really thinking about it the other day and like sometimes you think things are crashing down, but what they're do is they're crashing together. So they're not
Hmm.
falling on the floor and breaking or falling into abyss and it just never even mattered in the first place. Every little piece of your journey matters. It matters so deeply where you have to be careful, and especially in leadership, is allowing that past to become trauma versus learning because you bring your whole self to work. And when you bring your whole self into an environment, you can bring those biases of that stuff. And if you have that weight around it, like that was terrible, that was bad, I'm never going to do that again, you come in already self protecting. You come in already self-protecting. You're already have your shield up and you're ready to defend. And the energy that that brings in, especially as a leader, is one that does not invite participation. It does not invite innovation. It doesn't invite anything that's going to be anything but restrictive.
Yeah.
So I really do urge anyone in leadership, especially to do some form of deep work. I don't care what it is, but there's heaviness there, and there was heaviness around me growing up really poor too. There was a lot of heaviness. I just got for my 1 year relationship anniversary. I just got a rock tumbler for my 1 year anniversary, and grew up a poor kid. I made do, right? So I wanted a rock tumbler really bad when I was a kid, and I couldn't afford one. but what I had was a Yahtzee cup. And I put some rocks in a Yahtzee cup and some like watercolor paints, and I'd jiggle them around, and I'd pretend that I had a rock tumbler. And now here now as an adult, I love hiking and rock hounding and
Hmm.
finding stones and things like that. So receiving that as a gift, when you have reframed your past to, wow, I made do, but that made me innovative, versus I grew up poor. I had nothing. I'm always going to have nothing. That's just how I'm wired. I come from
Oh
a
yeah.
generation after generation after generation of business failures, and I'm going to be one too. Same story, right? Same story. No change in anything except for the context in
Yeah.
which the pair of glasses that I look at things through. So I challenge your listeners to really use your what has happened in the past and use it as fuel. Use it as fuel. Turn that pain into purpose. The reason why products are invented is because people are in pain and need a solution. Services, same thing. New services come up. Innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. And generally, when it does happen in a vacuum, just because the founder thinks it's cool, those are usually the ones that don't last too long and they fizzle out. I just commented on a article in the media about this today, and about the metaverse, and how, well, the first iteration of the metaverse was called Second Life.
Hmm.
And everyone was all excited about Second Life at that point in time. But when you have a clear pain, when you have a clear desire, when you have a business case, that's when you have a product or a service. Same thing. Carry that forward and go, wow, there is something that I can offer this world that nobody else can. And the reason why nobody else can do that is because of my lived experience. And when you come to a place where you're bringing that forward in gratitude, you can turn that pain into purpose, and you can transform any setback into a breakthrough for yourself or others.
I like what you said about those leaders. Like what I see, for example, you are a leader in a big corporate company. You have like you are working as a senior manager, whatever. So you're basically a leader, right? And you have let's say 10, 20, or even 100 people under your schedule, under your structure, and you have to manage them well. When your employees see you as a leader, they feel like, oh, everything is okay. He's so like into the business. He knows what is he doing, but nobody knows because maybe he's not open. He's not honest. He doesn't want to speak up in front of his employees or in front of his CEO about his personal life. Like, but actually, I'm struggling with my wife. We're getting divorced, for example, or my kid is sick, and that's how like these opportunities to grow or like that's why they hire you, for example, to help them grow to overcome the situations. Because like what I see also from my personal perspective, when I had like fights with my parents or with my girlfriend at the time, I wasn't able to do like 100% in my work. I was maybe maximum to 30 to 40%. And everybody could feel like, what's going on with her? And I wasn't honest with them because I was scared if I tell them like, oh, dude, I'm like, I'm after breakup. Like yesterday I got drunk and, they would be like, you better quit this job or something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I also like what you said. Turn pain into the purpose. That's also what I see. Like you also turn your pain into your purpose because you've been rejected when you were studying. Like the government told you you have to quit your studies if you want to get money from us, if I'm understanding correctly. And then you
Mm-hmm.
find a solution, and here we are. Here we are talking about your purpose, about your business, about your how you're helping those leaders. So my question is, many leaders come to you, if I'm not wrong, exhausted, right? What are the biggest challenges they face these days when they come to you?
A lot of companies are facing issues with funding and
Hmm.
how to create cash flow within their organizations. A lot of nonprofits are losing government funding
I
and
see.
trying to understand how to get funds from donors, create volunteer forces, optimize their internal workforces. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a big problem that I'm seeing in the nonprofit sector for sure. Other issues that I'm facing are related to the human risks of performance and understanding what makes someone great at what they're doing versus what makes somebody not the right fit, and understanding role clarity and what does it look like to have a clear organizational objective that trickles down to very clear key results that need to be achieved in the organization, and how do you measure that? So to create actual performance in the organization, is my organization bloated, or what is happening? A lot of people are needing to transform right now because our whole environment has changed with technology and with AI and the opportunities around AI. So digital transformation is something also that a lot of companies are coming to me to talk about. They're talking to me about AI and AI adoption
Mm-hmm.
and AI risks and the ability to maybe automate some of what they have, what needs to be automated versus what needs to be human or hybrid human, and how can that be used again to save costs
Yeah.
organizationally. So it all comes down to, again, that core thing of money. How do we generate it? How do we save it? How do we optimize it? And innovation is all about getting new results from something yet unseen. And how does that innovation come about considering that money picture?
It's very nicely said. I have a question like, how do you find those clients, especially mentioned non-organizations, companies, like you help them with their growth, like help them to find founding or the solution. That's actually really nice because what I see, also people in my generation between like 20 to 40 years old, this let's talk about this gap, they realize like they don't want to work for a company for the rest of their life because they have some gifts inside, but they are scared to start because they have lack of finances and they don't know how to, for example, get funding if they want to start like, for example, here in Bali, they want to open a school for local kids, but they realize, well, we have to pay for a land, we have to build a house, and it's already costing at least $250,000, you know? What would you, for example, in this case, tell these people, if I may ask you? And also, how do you find this client that are willing to pay you for your services for your business?
Okay, so a couple of different questions there, but I'll start with the school in
Yeah, yeah.
Bali. First of all, whenever you're starting a business, do not spend dime one until you have validated the concept.
Mhm.
So, do we know that a school is needed? How do we know a school is needed? Who is willing to fund the school? Who needs the school? Asking these questions is really important because you can spend a lot of money before you've even validated the fact that anybody wants you. So asking those questions is really, really important. And to come into clarity as a business leader of, okay, here's who wants it. Here's what grants are available. Here's what funding is available. Here is the pricing structure. We've talked to these people about the pricing and tuition structure. They can afford it. All right, well, based on what they can afford and what they can pay and according to which time, here are some projections for what this is going to look like. All of this I've spent zero. I've just asked questions.
Mhm.
And it takes a great deal of bravery to ask questions like that, to admit what we don't know. And like I tell my clients all the time, to be willing to unlearn what you think you know. So the other question, how I find clients, I have a masterclass. It's a
Mm-hmm.
CEO innovation masterclass. If you go to peopleriskconsulting.com, there's a training center there, but I actually put a little gate on the website where you can just go straight to it, apply to the masterclass. Right now, the gate is completely open because it's brand new. So it's an open opportunity for anyone to come and learn about those basics of innovation. But how I've found clients to date, I've people have told them about me. Someone
Mm-hmm.
has read my book, or in the past, I've had a column or been in the media and someone's seen me and come to me. I really take an attraction strategy to that. I believe that when you sing your song, the people who love your music will come to you. So it's a practice for me of continuously singing my song, knowing that the individuals who need me the most will hear me. Ultimately, I work with founders and CEOs of companies who are established. So I don't work with a lot of startups anymore. I did when I was freelancing at the very
Yeah.
beginning. But now I work with executives who have legacies to protect,
Mm-hmm.
who are at that point where they have made their first money. Maybe they've been in business for 10, 20 years, and in order to get to their next level, what got them there won't get them to that next part. So they have to start being willing to unlearn what they think they know, doing some
Yeah.
different things to get to that point. And oftentimes it's all about experimentation strategy. It's all about change management strategy to avoid change fatigue or change chaos. And it's all about communication strategy and how to communicate with others, how to communicate with all of your stakeholders, your board, your customers, your internal employees, your everybody in relation to what you're trying to innovate and what you're trying to accomplish. So I touch on a little bit of that, a little touch of each in the master class. I talk about the protective masks and the control masks. I
Mm-hmm.
talk about a 5-day experimentation strategy and a way that companies can learn. And the master class, I offer a complimentary ticket to it. So it's me and a bunch of people from all over the world. I'd love to see people from all over the world in this master class. And we just walk together. And those who feel called can then join the CEO innovation cohort. And that same group, like I had in college, who helped me understand that it was time to start my management consulting firm, I cultivate that for people. I
Mm-hmm.
cultivate that safe environment where no one's going to sell you, no one's going to tell your secrets, and no one's going to put you in legal constraints or trouble. And you walk together, you're all working on something different, but you walk together, you know experimentation strategy, I'm there to help, and it costs less than an employee. And I think it's a really great value for people. And that's how I would intend to attract my clients from here on.
I like what you said about asking the proper questions. These days, to be honest, is much easier. You know why? Because we have AI. I can just open, for example, the most famous these days, which was one of the first. It's ChatGPT, right? And he can guide you with like given the proper questions that you want to ask. Those like I like what you said, especially about the example as I get like about the school in Bali, for example. And when you were giving those questions, I was like, wow. I was thinking in my mind like, I don't really know if big percentage of people who want to start business in here, I don't think they ask those questions at the beginning because what I see, people building the same businesses all over the world, they feel like only a few percent of the businesses create something new that actually is going to be great for community, it's going to be sustainable or something like this, you know? And I was like, wow, if people ask these questions that you gave us, maybe they will think in a different way. Maybe those questions could save them a lot of money, a lot of stress at the beginning, And that's also what I do believe you also teach your future clients is in your masterclass, because this is like the basic questions they have to understand. And it's also part of the Inspiroqa. So I'm happy to share these questions to people who's gonna watch this video, who's gonna listen to this podcast. How has your work changed your personally?
I think that as your business grows, you evolve as a
Hmm.
person. I am not the same person that I was 10 years ago when I was flipped upside down and wondering if I should start my business. I was way more tactical. I had to get the courage to ask the questions.
Yeah.
It's really a continuous development process. And that's why being willing to unlearn what you think you know is so important. Because if you're not, if you're stuck in what you think you know, you can't evolve. And a cautionary tale too about AI. AI makes it very easy for everybody to be mediocre.
Yeah.
And it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't know how to prompt, how to ask the question, I'll give you an example. I have a client who started abdicating leadership responsibility to AI. Every decision went through AI. Every single decision started going through AI. And suddenly, the business wasn't doing so well.
Uh-huh.
Why? Why was that? Context. AI lacks context. It is great for data analysis when your context is clear, where you have a clear research question. I use it all the time for data analysis. So I will take my client interviews and I will have very specific frameworks set up where I am analyzing this data according to these frameworks, and my analysis will come out. Why? Because the context is clear. So, what is context? Context is knowing all about the environment and the nuances to the environment of the question. So, AI will give some very perfect world answers. In a perfect world, this is exactly how it goes. And it's gonna be pretty good 75% of the time. Try adding in a little bit of context. ChatGPT was really slammed recently for being overly positive.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're absolutely right. That changes it completely. Da 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 da. So be really careful when you're utilizing AI to understand the process, the context, the use case, what you're wanting to accomplish with that. Because when you do, you are going to really be able to harness the power of AI without over indexing on it.
That's very nicely explained. I like the way you said explain about the context. We are coming to the end of our conversation, our beautiful conversation. The 1 hour is almost gone, just like this. We're just following the flow. And my last question is, what message would you give to people all around the world? Any kind of message.
Look, what you focus on increases. So, if you focus on where things are going terribly, you're going to see more that's going on terribly. And if you focus on the good, if you focus on the innovation, if you focus on the opportunity, you are going to see more of that. Realize that we now live in a world that is an attention based economy, and people are doing things for the clicks. I encourage
Mhm.
everyone around the world to focus on what empowers you, that drives your ability to innovate, and that gives you energy so that you can maintain your mindset to create a better world for yourself.